So nice to be here with you. I want to talk to you today about the power of the introverts in your workplace and about the quiet revolution that I am launching. Introverts make up a third to a half of the population. Third to a half, that's 1 out of every 2 or 3 people you know. Might be you, might be the person sitting next to you. And I know that that statistic sounds surprising, but that's because so many introverts get into the habit of acting much more extroverted than we really are. Now, we're going to talk about that. I also want to say to all of you that you all attend way too many meetings. Way too many meetings. And if you want to be at your most creative and your most productive, you have to be spending some time in solitude, and I'll explain why that is. I also want to talk about leadership. We desperately need to rethink what we mean by leadership and who we think of as leaders. Okay, but before we do all that, I want to get each of you thinking about who you are and where do you fall on this introvert-extrovert spectrum. There is an interesting neurobiological explanation for what gives extroverts what I call this wonderful champagne bubble quality. We all have in our brains reward networks, which are the parts of our brains that get excited and activated at the prospect of something appealing, like an attractive stranger across the room or a business deal you might want to do. And extroverts have more easily activated reward networks than introverts do. So we all have reward networks, but it's easier for the extroverts in this room to get kind of jazzed up and go for it when they see something they really want to do. And so it's interesting to understand this because there is a perfect alignment between the biological nature of extroverts and our cultural dictum to just do it and to seize the day. It's a perfect alignment. Whereas introverts in the room are the ones who are more likely to say, yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, but wait a minute. Have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? Let's map this out. And so when you start looking at these two very different ways of approaching life and reality, you start to see how much we really need each other. You know, how much we really are yin and yang, and you can't do things successfully without having these two styles working together. Individuals who brainstorm by themselves produce more ideas and better ideas than groups of people brainstorming together. So like, if you really want to be effective, what you should be doing is sending people off to work by themselves, think things through, and only then do they come together and share what they've learned with the group. In your organizations, your prominent introverts should be talking publicly about their quiet sides, about what they've done to overcome the limitations of that, and about what the strengths are. You're seeing here a picture of a Harvard Business Review blog by Douglas Conant, the same Campbell Soup CEO I was telling you about. So he's been blogging really publicly about this stuff, and it's incredibly energizing for people. I think the most powerful keynote that I ever gave was after I did the keynote. I sat on stage with the CEO of the company who had brought me in, and the CEO revealed to a room about this size of his own employees, he revealed for the first time that he's an introvert, which kind of shocked them, because, as I said, there's a lot of introverts who kind of go around disguised as extroverts. But he revealed who he is, what he struggles with, and he really talked about this stuff openly. And it was a watershed moment in the company. And the other flip side, the other byproduct of this is it encourages other people to open up to you, you know, and everybody can come to work and just be their authentic selves instead of putting on a show. Okay, second, to make breaks and solo walks and naps and meditation, all these things part of your workday, and to feel entitled to them, and to create cultures where this stuff is permitted. Not just permitted, but smiled upon. At Huffington Post, Arianna Huffington, not long ago, introduced nap rooms to the office. And she said that when she first, you know, there are these two beautiful rooms, and they look like spa, places you would go for a spa treatment. And she said when she first introduced these, no one wanted to use them because they were afraid of being looked down upon for it. But she started using them herself. She made it acceptable. And now those are the most popular rooms in the office. People use them all the time. Okay, and finally, this is probably the most important one, the participation gap between introverts and extroverts in meetings. I hear this all the time. I hear extroverts will say to me, you know, I have this colleague. I know he's really bright, but he won't say anything in meetings. So what's going on? You know, is he aloof? Is he disengaged? Is he looking for another job? And then the introverts tell me, by the time I thought of the thing that I wanted to say, the meeting was over. And this is kind of endemic because by our natures, extroverts think out loud. This is how extroverts process information. And introverts want to process stuff before we articulate it. So, you know, very, very different styles. So I want to just give you a few ideas of how to bridge this gap. most important one is to really ask people to prepare before meetings. And I don't just mean sending around a quick agenda and having people superficially glance at it. I mean really creating an expectation that people will sit down, think, prepare before they come in. And then halfway through the meeting, or whenever you think it's the right time, call a break and ask people to just sit down and write and think and reflect about what's been said. And then you might go around the room one by one and just ask people to share their thoughts. Because the main thing that you want to avoid is having a meeting where the consensus develops around the views of the most assertive or charismatic person in the room. The response to these ideas has been so heartfelt and so profound from companies and schools across the country that I felt like I couldn't just leave it at that. So I'm actually starting what I call a quiet revolution, and we are a venture-backed organization. We are going to be going into schools and into companies to really transform the way things work. And one of the projects that I'm most excited about is we're creating a quiet TV channel where I'm going to be interviewing famous introverts about their lives and what it is about their temperaments that has so shaped their contributions. So just a few people who have already agreed to participate. We have Tom Peters, Ariana Huffington, Wendy Kopp of Teach for America, Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki. So I'm really excited about that, and just kind of stay tuned. And in closing, I would just like to say that this really is what we're talking about today. This is the next big diversity issue of our time. You can expect to hear a lot more about this over the next 10 years. We know, all of us, the case for racial diversity, gender diversity, ethnic diversity. We know that these are issues that impact the bottom line, but also make our organizations richer places to be. And the same exact thing is true of personality diversity. We desperately need the talents of the bold and the gregarious people, and we need the talents of the more quiet and careful thinkers. All it requires is thinking just a little bit differently about what it means to be